Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to 2023. Our first 15 minutes in WACSI by the Institute. And of course, we are always very excited to bring to you exciting, intriguing, enriching conversations around the work we do as actors within the civil society space and how much relevance this work we are doing is for our society. On today's edition, we have a wonderful guest. Someone I'm sure many of you must have collaborated with her or have heard about the great work she's been doing, which of course she will talk about some of it with us in this edition. And of course, some of you might have worked with her directly. With me today at WACSI in Accra, Ghana, is none other than Deborah Doane. Deborah, welcome to Ghana, welcome to WACSI, welcome to 15 Minutes in WACSI.
Thank you, Jim. It's a pleasure, after having worked together for 2.5 years virtually, to be here in your office. It's amazing to see it.
Great. Thank you so much. And Deborah, to kickstart this conversation, it will be good for our audience to know who you are. Can you just briefly tell us, who is Deborah Doane?
That's an existential question. I've been working in civil society for over 25 years. I've led organizations, I've led campaigns, I've worked with philanthropy, and I've mainly worked in networks because I always believe in collaborating with others and coordinated networks. Most recently, what I've been doing is convening the RINGO project alongside WACSI through Rights Collab, which is a human rights social change think tank. We're all over the world, and it's been a platform to engage reimagining the INGO, what do we need from global civil society, but actually what does this mean about all of our relationships across the civil society ecosystem. So I've been convening that, writing about it, thinking about it, obsessing about it for the last 3 years.
And it was quite an interesting journey, you know, for these 2.5 years. But can you just, where did this idea originate from?
That's a really good question. So I said I've been in civil society for, more than 25 years now. And I'm going to take us back on a journey, if that's okay.
Very important.
So 20 years ago, I've lost track of time, more than that, 23 years ago, more than that, 25 years ago, let's just go all the way back. I was coordinating, fresh out of graduate school, and I was coordinating something called the Humanitarian Ombudsman Project. And this was an initiative that came out of the humanitarian response to the Rwandan genocide. Serious business, where there were huge flaws in the lack of accountability, the top-down approaches, and the way that the international sector worked on humanitarian aid. You could see local organizations squeezed out. There were recommendations that they had to be more accountable to the people that they were working with and aiming to serve. So that sat with me for many years. In those intervening years, I did many things. But then fast forward to 2016, and we saw closing space for civil society in many parts of the world. And in 2017, I was working with philanthropic actors. And again, the idea of INGO accountability popped up. They were in countries where civic space was rapidly closing. You saw a real division between international civil society and local civil society, where quite often international civil society would say, yes, government, we're fine with working with you when you restrict our space, leaving human rights organizations, other civil society actors under the bus. And it wasn't actually serving to protect and uphold democratic principles. So that stuck with me. 2018, we had Oxfam scandals, Save the Children scandals, a lot of these scandals that showed the international sector wasn't doing what it should have been doing and working in a way that was all right, actually. So all of these pieces came together, and then 2021, we had Black Lives Matter and everything else, and all, which is the actions that happened in the US resonated. We had COVID, a pandemic, and so it sat with me for some time. I'm going to go back a little bit more. Tell me if I'm going on for too long. In 2017, Nana, your CEO, one of our colleagues, Jenny Richmond, myself, Jenny Hodgson from the Global Fund for Community Foundations, and Danny Shishkandaraja, were convened, a number of us were convened in a place in South Africa where we talked about shift the power. And how do you, and the barrier of the INGOs kept coming up again. So I put all of these pieces together, and I thought, well, we really need a systems change, because we need stronger national and local civil societies. And everybody kind of recognizes that and acknowledges that, but the INGOs kept getting in the way. They scoop up the resources. Their behaviors were arrogant, top-down. They had the relationships with the bilateral funders or the private philanthropy. But yet we need that global connectivity. We still need a global civil society. So I met Charles. I met Nana. Well, I'd met her before, but engaged with Charles and Nana, who were both involved in Rights CoLab, and started thinking about these systems change approaches. I had done systems change work when I worked for WWF many years back, and that's where the idea came from. Sorry, that was a very long answer, but it's important to note that these ideas have been bubbling in different places, and there's great innovation happening on the ground. I think WACSI is doing some fantastic work with your regional, actors in this space, but no one is really tackling the problem and the opportunity of the international sector.
Great. It was really good, and congratulations, and thank you for initiating this with all the actors that you've mentioned. And looking at how far you've come from giving birth to this idea, bringing together key actors to hold on to this idea, believe this idea, and roll on with this idea. It is important to note, ladies and gentlemen, that RINGO over the years has convened at least about 1,500 diverse actors from across the globe. A significant achievement, but I want you to tell us more about these milestones over 2.5 years. What have you seen that you are really pleased with from the interaction so far?
So I think the really important dimension of RINGO was that we wanted to go from all these reports, what's wrong with the sector, what do we need more of, into the doing, to getting people to try new things out and innovate, and then using that to influence. So in the first year of RINGO, we convened people to think about where are the opportunities in the system, where are the barriers. But the second year, we convened around what we called prototypes. And we looked at risk or language and communications or participation and all these different areas where there were barriers, there were policy areas at the government level, and we got people to do something about it. And I think that was a really key innovation for RINGO and a key milestone. And we didn't say we had the answers, right? We weren't top-down and INGO kind of arrogant, we know what has to be done. We got people involved with co-designing, with co-doing, and seeing, Jim, what is your area of influence? What can you do? What do you bring to the table? What can you do? Rather than saying it's someone else's problem. So the second year, we convened 7 prototypes, and we got them all to a stage of having achieved some learning and being able to share that with others who might be able to take more things forward.
That just makes me to appreciate even more, this magnificent initiative, reimagining INGOs, RINGO. And talking concretely to this, one of the key things that kickstarted this initiative was the fact that INGOs stood as a barrier, to development. After these 2 years, what are some of those blocks that constitute this barrier that you are seeing some shifts that gives us some hope within the sector?
I think because we did it as a systems change project, we brought in local civil society actors, national, international, funders, both private and public funders, academics. We brought in the system so that, one of the key dimensions of RINGO isn't what could Oxfam do on its own, but actually what is the barrier that Oxfam might face, that Save the Children might face, that CARE might face, that a local CSO might face. It might be in risk and reporting, for example. By bringing in actors who have agency, I think we've been able to unlock the thinking that we can't do anything about it, that's no small thing, actually, changing attitudes. We've been able to unlock the feeling that people had that I'm on my own with this problem, I just have to live with it. It's one of the frustrations of being in civil society, how annoying. Giving people a sense of hope and creating a community of practice around that. I think it's been incredibly motivating. So that's been something else that we've unlocked. And now we're seeing real shifts because you're getting a critical mass involved in change. So we've opened doors at the bilateral space through the OECD to talk, not just say we need localization, but actually these are some of the barriers to doing it, and then thinking now more practically, okay, how can we innovate around those barriers and get rid of those barriers? The leadership, we've given the courage to the leadership in several INGOs to bring in decolonization strategies to get that discussion going with their board. Those are, again, things that I think a lot of us have been in the sector. You've been in the sector for some time, haven't you, Jim?
I have.
Right? A lot of us have been in the sector for a long time, been sitting with, I've been sitting with it since, the late 90s, these issues going, that actually it doesn't have to be the status quo. And when you get a critical mass thinking that, and also saying, I can do this and this and this, I think RINGO's been a real force to unlock that.
Thank you all who have contributed to the journey so far. And I am just very curious, and I'm sure many of our listeners will really want to know. Yes, 2.5 years have gone by so fast, I must say, thanks to RINGO. But there are many more years ahead. What's in view for the sector, for those who are keen on joining this movement to promote and ensure that there is veritable systems change? What's in stock for all of us in the years ahead?
Some of that's going to be down to you, actually. But, we had a 10-year vision, didn't we? We had short-term goals, and then we had a long-term goal, which is a transformed system. I think in this journey, we need people to join us in experimenting with our prototypes. Like, we've got some ideas on the table. The reverse call for proposals, we've been talking about this today. Get some people to try that out. Share your learning with us. So being open to experimentation. There's lots of opportunities for people to do that. And using influence. We need to influence the boards of funders, we need to influence governments, and we need to influence the boards and the senior leadership of INGOs. So I think for people, say, in West Africa, there's lots of, within many of our prototypes you can take on. You can immediately take on the language and lexicon one, right? Where you start using a whole new development language and stop using some of the neo-colonial, patronizing, sexist language that's endemic in the sector. We can give you a tool to do that. You can try working on, PGM, participation approaches. You can start demanding different relationships with INGO. So that's in the practice side. And then it's actually in building confidence to have a voice to say to a funder or an INGO who is your funder, this isn't working for me. Because I think at those levels, I think they're now in the state to hear it. Many, not all. And the more we build that voice and that confidence to say, actually, we want a different relationship with you, and this is what we need from you, this isn't what we need from you, that's where we're going. So in 10 years' time, what would you want? I think you'll have much better resourced, more autonomous in terms of its strength and what it can do, national and probably subnational civil society groups in the region, a much more egalitarian relationship, I hope, with the international sector, where you say, that's your role, that's my role. And I think fewer resources going to the international sector overall.
Thank you very much for that. And before we leave the studio, what is that key message you are sending to the INGOs, to the funders, who have a key role to play to ensure that this goal for the next 10 years is realized? What message do you have for us?
Oh gosh, to the international sector,
that's right,
rather than the local. So the local sector, the message is, take the power. The international sector is not just about shifting power, but it's about saying, what is the civil society we need to overcome all of these issues we're dealing with. And to really ask yourself, is the work you're doing now contributing to that or getting in the way of that? And there doesn't always have to be a value add of a role of an international actor. So I suppose it's, in a nutshell, it's wherever possible, shift the power.
Wherever possible, shift the power. And for our colleagues in Africa, in South America, in Asia, take the power. That is the message from Deborah Doane. Deborah, it's been a pleasure having this conversation with you. And of course, I'm sure many would enjoy this conversation and would want you to come back to this seat on 15 Minutes in WACSI. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup aussi.
Merci beaucoup. Et juste avant de terminer, qu'est-ce que vous avez comme message pour nos auditeurs, surtout ceux qui parlent la langue française?
Pour la langue française, la discussion, ok, je vais essayer ça en français. La discussion sur le concept de shift the power ou décolonisation n'est pas aussi forte en français. Il faut être, comment on dit, acting with intention. To bring this alive.
Réagir avec un but fort.
Exactement, c'est ça.
Pour s'assurer que ça soit réalisé.
C'est ça, c'est très important.
Très important, chers auditeurs. On est très très fiers que vous avez pu suivre cette édition avec nous. Rejoignez-nous sur YouTube pour avoir plus des éditions sur 15 Minutes in WACSI. And ladies and gentlemen, follow our YouTube page to get more videos, more discussions on 15 Minutes in WACSI, and most importantly, some of the discussions from the RINGO process, that most of which, particularly from the Learning Festival that closed the year of 2022, we have all those recordings on our YouTube page, so feel free to watch them and share your comments on this video on what you think about the Reimagining INGO process, and if you want to stay involved, write to us and we will get back to you. It's our process. Let's join Deborah and colleagues and really make the shift we want to come to pass. Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thanks, Jim.